Hi, yes, I'm here with Ian, and we're going to read and talk about the Spanish story, The Carnation Youth. There was once a poor laborer who had an only daughter whom he loved very dearly. One day, when he was on his way home from his daily work, he saw a pink carnation growing beside the path. He picked it and carried it home to his daughter. She declared that it was the most beautiful carnation she had ever seen. She put it carefully into a glass of water. That evening, as she held it in her hand, admiring it, she carelessly let it fall into the candle. The pink carnation began to burn immediately. At that moment, there suddenly appeared a handsome youth who said to the girl sadly, "Why don't you speak to me? You will have to seek me among the rocks of the whole world." Then he disappeared as mysteriously as he had appeared. The poor laborer's daughter had never seen such a handsome young man in her life. She dreamed of him night and day. His words kept ringing in her ears. "You will have to seek me among the rocks of the whole world." There was nothing else for the girl to do except to go in search of the mysterious youth. She could no longer be happy in her own home. Accordingly, she walked and walked. Finally, she came to a high rock on the bank of a river, and as she was exceedingly tired, she sat down to rest. It was very hot, and she began to cry because of her great weariness and the intense heat. Suddenly, the rock opened, and the handsome youth stepped out. "Why are you crying?" he asked gently. The girl was so frightened that she could not say a word. She just kept on crying. The handsome youth went on. "Over there through the forest, you will see a large house with broad fields about it. Go to the house and hire out as a servant. They will receive you gladly there." With these words, he disappeared into the rock. There was nothing better for the tired girl to do than to follow his advice, and she found the house as he had directed. The mistress of the house was in need of a maid, and she hired the girl at once. Soon the laborer's daughter became the favorite servant of the entire establishment, with her pretty face, her industrious habits, and her pleasant ways. Then the other servants became jealous, and they plotted against her to get her into trouble. They went to their mistress and said, "Do you know what your new maid has been saying in the kitchen?" Their mistress ordered them to tell her what it was. "She says that you do not need to have so many servants. She alone could wash all the dirty clothes in one day." The mistress called the little maid to her and asked if it was true. The poor girl wept and said that it was false, that she had never said any such thing. But the other servants agreed that they all had heard her say it, and her mistress commanded her to wash all the dirty clothes in one day, according to her boast. The little maid went to the river with the dirty clothes and sat down upon the rocks to cry. Suddenly the rock opened, and the handsome youth stepped forward. "Why are you crying?" he asked. The girl was so surprised that she did not answer, but went on crying harder than ever. The youth continued, "Do not worry about washing the clothes. Just leave them here on the river bank and ask all the birds of the world to come and help you." The girl looked up in amazement, but the youth had disappeared into the rock. She did as he had advised and called out, "O birds of all the world, come and help me." Soon the birds of all the world came flocking to the river bank. There were big birds and little birds and middle-sized birds. There were black birds and brown birds and blue birds and red birds and yellow birds. The little maid had not known that there were so many kinds of birds in the whole world. The birds seized the dirty garments in their beaks and shook them up and down in the river. Soon all the soiled clothes were clean and white. In the afternoon they were dry and ready to carry home. The mistress and the other servants could not believe their eyes when they saw that the washing had all been done. The mistress loved her little maid more than ever, and told all her friends what a perfect jewel of a servant she had in her employ. Then the other servants became more jealous than ever and thought of another plot. Now it happened that their mistress had an only son who left the house one day and never came back. He had been enchanted. Their poor mother wept until she nearly lost her eyesight. Accordingly, the servants went to their mistress and said that the new maid had boasted that she knew where to get an eye water which would cure any eye trouble in the world. Of course, the poor girl had never said such a thing, but all the servants agreed that she had, and her mistress became angry because her maid had known of an eye water which she had not obtained. Accordingly, the mistress sent the girl in search of the eye water which would restore failing sight. The little maid went down to the river bank and sat down among the rocks, crying as if her heart would break. She did not know a single thing about eye waters. At once the rock opened, and the handsome youth stepped out. "What is the matter? Why are you crying?" he asked. As he received no reply, she went on to say, "I know how you may obtain an eye water which will cure my mother's eyesight. Take a cup and stand by the river bank. Then call the birds of all the world and ask them to come and weep with you." The youth disappeared. The little maid followed his advice and stood by the river bank with a cup in her hands. She asked the birds of all the world to come and weep with her, and at once they came flying up to her. Each one deposited a tear in the cup, and soon it was full. The last bird which came dropped a tiny white feather into the cup. When she bathed the eyes of her mistress with the water, using the tiny white feather, her mistress became better immediately. Soon she could see as well as ever, and she loved her little maid more and more. The jealous servants plotted again against the maid. They told their mistress that she had boasted of knowing how to break the enchantment which bound the son of the house. By this time, their mistress had such confidence in her maid that she believed the girl could do anything. When she said she had never made any such boast, her mistress said, "Never mind, just go ahead and try. If you should succeed in breaking my son's enchantment and restoring him to me once more, I'll make you his wife." The little maid went down to the rocks beside the river and cried as if her heart would break. The handsome youth came forth from the rock as before and asked her why she was crying. When she did not reply, he said, "I know that my mother has sent you to break my enchantment. Gather together all the maidens in the town, rich and poor alike, and come and march about the rocks in a procession, each girl with a lighted candle in her hand. Be sure that no candle goes out. We'll see what that will do to break my enchantment." When he had once more disappeared, the little maid ran as fast as she could to gather together all the young girls of the town, rich as well as poor. A beautiful procession they made, too, when they came to march about the rocks, each with a lighted candle in her hand. The little maid was the last of all in the procession, and just as she came to the rocks, the wind blew out her candle. "Oh, what shall I do? My candle has gone out," she cried. She saw that the handsome youth had already appeared. "At last you have spoken in my presence," he cried. "Now at last my enchantment is broken." "I thought I had spoiled everything when my candle went out," exclaimed the little maid. The young man explained to her how he had been enchanted one day when he was walking in the field. He had been changed into a carnation and had been told that his enchantment would be broken only when the person who burned the carnation should speak in his presence. "You did not say one word when you burned me," he told her reproachfully. "I had to go back into the rocks from which the carnation had sprung, and I began to think I'd never get you to say a word to me. You didn't do anything but cry." The youth's mother was the happiest woman in the town when she saw that her son was restored to her, alive and well. She kissed her little maid upon both cheeks. "You shall be my own dear daughter now," she told her. "The wedding shall be celebrated immediately." The little maid was entirely cured of the crying habit, and fortunate it was, for all the delays in getting his enchantment broken, her husband's patience could never have endured a crying woman. The end. Kind of
That
funny
ending,
commentary at the end there, huh?
100%. I was like, what are you, why do you got to be like, right at the end of the great story? And thankfully, the woman stopped crying and she wasn't annoying to her husband anymore.
Yeah.
It's just kind of rough. But, old tales, old standards. At least we can laugh at it. So yeah, man, what did you think? I really like this one.
Yeah, I liked it too. I mean, we had originally kind of thought to do this from a Michael Mead podcast where he talked just generally about it being about perfectionism, and maybe the idea of her not talking beforehand was because she had kind of implicitly held herself to a standard or something. She had just had some idea of perfectionism that she couldn't live up to, perfection that she couldn't live up to, and maybe that's why she couldn't speak because she was afraid to. And finally, just in making a mistake at a very solemn kind of ordered an important event, she finally spoke, and that was actually what broke the curse, not doing something perfectly, which was what she thought she was supposed to do. I mean, I think that's the general kind of his general take on this story. Is that right? I
I
mean, is
think
that
so.
your
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. I listened to that again this morning. It's a great podcast. But that's how he did map it onto sort of perfectionism and the ways we can sort of freeze up in the face of
Mm,
challenges. If we
mm,
have this sort of need to, I don't know, ensure safety or belonging or some level of esteem in ourselves only if we can get something perfectly right.
yeah,
And so we don't move forward with it otherwise.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's a great take on this story, and a very important life lesson. I think I know I have, and probably most people have this kind of maybe, cat got your tongue, or the reason you're not moving forward with something, maybe especially like a potential good relationship or love relationship, is because you're trying to say the perfect thing. You're trying to have the situation be perfect. You're afraid that you're not good enough. So then you just avoid it. And then
yeah,
that's when the opportunity flees and is trapped somewhere. And then you have to go through all the labors to kind of learn your lesson. Oh.
yeah, yeah. I think one of the reasons I like this story so much is if you trace the daughter, the maid, the main character, if you trace her sort of path of growth um, from being the like laborer's daughter to sort of marrying essentially the prince. I mean,
Mm,
he's the son of a big house, son
mm,
of the mistress, son of the woman that has all the servants.
mm,
Um, she she's presented with him as a pairing right at the beginning of the story
mm,
when she accidentally burns the flower, but um, she has to move through these stages to get to a point where like she's able to speak in front of him. Like you were saying, she's able to just sort of stop whatever it is that's keeping her frozen, drops away, and she's finally able to express herself. And
yeah.
then she's at that point she's ready to actually marry him and take her place in sort of the noble realm. I
Mm,
think we've talked in the past that one of the ways I look at fairy tales is like if you're talking about like a commoner marrying nobility, you can look at that as like our more earthly self sort of wedding or becoming integrated with something that's higher.
mm,
And that I would think that they just use the commoner and noble metaphor because that was easily understood when these stories were being told. So
mm,
it's a way of speaking the language of the people.
mm.
Um, but but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that way of looking at it too. Um, Just one little part of the story that I don't really have any idea about is the burning of the carnation in the fire in the
Mm,
candle.
mm,
Um, I mean, I mean? There's the carnation, the carne, the flesh, and then the fire can be kind of like a spirit, or fire cooks things. It transforms them into more digestible. When it cooks food, it becomes more digestible, more delicious, and it's also something that specifically to humans and kind of community and the skill of humans to cook food. But anyway, yeah, what did you think about that? Quite.
Hmm.
I was trying to link that to the progression of the story.
Yeah, that is interesting. One thing that I was just thinking, I don't have a strong answer, but we'll riff on it a little bit. Maybe we'll get somewhere. One thing I was thinking is that it starts with her accidentally lighting something on fire, and it ends with her purposefully lighting something on fire, but then it goes out when it's supposed. So there's this like weird kind of mirroring, almost reversal of
Yeah.
the like the two flames in the story.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's something about a flower being a thing of beauty that is temporary.
Yeah.
It's an expression. It's like a fulfillment of life
Mm.
in that
Yeah.
like the plant, the sprout grows and the leaves
Yeah.
grow, then the stalk grows and the bud grows and the flower opens.
Yeah.
So it's sort of this like, it's the flowering of the plant, literally.
Yeah.
Could be metaphor for a flowering, but
Mm.
um, I don't know. I her it's like her dad finds it. Her dad's a laborer. He's out working in the fields. He brings her home this like image of
Mm.
some sort of flowering.
Mm.
And I don't know, she accidentally drops it into the candle,
Mm.
which is, in the classic Joseph Campbell hero's journey thing, the call to adventure is often an accident. You slip and you fall into adventure. So there's sort
Yeah.
of that element there. But
That
I
makes
think
sense.
there's something you said about like the flower and the carnation and the flesh and the fire and the sort of ritual purification or the cooking and like the flower could be seen as like like a seed almost, or like a the motif of her eventual flowering as the bride of the prince. It's
Mm.
like that's the image of it. That's the because carne, flesh, solid, something that isn't just an idea. It's something,
Mm.
oh, this is a real thing. This could happen. But then to drop it into the fire is to, like you said, like cook it. It's to develop it further. It's to
Mm.
give it life. It's to sort of give up I mean, at the very beginning, it's to give up the perfect idea um in order to seek it out in real life. So like instead
Mm.
of for me, perfectionism hits really hard, like you were saying, in relationships and for me also in creative work. So like my newsletter, I haven't written that in a few weeks because I've been pretty wiped out. And I've been sort of caught in this perfectionist cycle of like, oh, I need to have the right idea. I need to figure out what I'm doing. I need to have the right kind of energy. I need to be in the right kind of mood at the right amount of time. And, you know, none of that has happened. Um, but in that moment, there's this idea I have of like what the perfect thing would be. And to start the journey towards actually realizing that perfect thing, the image of it would have to be given up, I would think.
Yeah.
So it feels like almost like a involuntary sacrifice on the daughter's part of something, in that she doesn't mean to do it, but she the whatever it is that the beauty of the flower speaks to her, it deposits in her some kind of a longing, because as soon as the image of it is gone, she can't stay home anymore. That's what the story
Yeah.
says. At that point, she has to leave.
That's
So
right.
the flower has done something to like initiate her into her journey.
Yeah.
It's created like almost like hey, you can have something this beautiful. And then once that image, the signifier of the beauty is gone, then she's left to wonder what's possible. I guess in meditation, if you have like a big aha moment where you're like, oh, I see we're all one with everything and whatever, and then it goes away, and you're like, shit, I'm back in my old self. Like, what was that? Or a lot of people I think experience that with like psychedelics and drugs. They have
Mm.
these big
Yeah.
kind of breakthrough moments, and then afterwards there's this sense of like, what was I even thinking? But
Yeah.
you know now you have this image and you have this understanding of some kind of beauty or some kind of meaning that's possible, and then you want to go out into the world to seek it. So actually, I'm like hearing myself talk. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But I certainly wasn't thinking that ahead of time. I was also, when you asked about like what the flower was, I was like, yeah, I haven't really looked at that one too close. But I think that the transmutation by fire really kind of is the key. Like you were saying, the cooking, fire as development, evolution, sort of there's something there that I can't
Yeah.
quite wrap a thread all the way around, but I think it's pretty clear. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. As you were talking, you started at some point you said it was like, or I was thinking an offering, and you said something similar, like it was a sacrifice or something.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I think it makes sense a lot in sort of imagery language. So her father sees in his work, in his labor, his daily kind of doing what he's supposed to be doing, helping out himself, his family, and sort of going into the elements a little bit. And then the product of that in some way is that he finds this beautiful flower growing that is somehow symbolic of that is beautiful and is symbolic of flesh, of a human in some way. And I think you talked about it being like an image sort of maybe of his daughter. And anyway, that's what I was thinking, is like it was an image of his daughter, and so he brings it to her as a yeah, as a gift, like this is how I think of you. This is what you are to me. That's kind of like what a gift is, right? It's like this is a little thing that is some representation of our relationship. And sometimes, I think a great gift is when you can offer. So I think of like a good gift as something that they like or need that doesn't it is from like a true like or need. It's not something that's sort of exacerbated or unnatural or something that will make them that's actually on a wrong path in their life.
Mm.
But I think of a great gift as something that you can give them that they did not know that they needed or wanted. And so it's, it kind of can help move things forward. And when the laborer brings the flower to her, yeah, this is something that is like her fate, and the life, and um but yeah, she's not ready for it. She's not there yet in her life. So yeah, she drops it, and then that initiates the laborious journey and hardships and trials and the impossible tasks that are given to her. In many stories, there's like sort of older maternal, kind of maybe slightly twisted older maternal figure will give the Cinderella-like character the uh, the impossible task that she has to do, but then she kind of like develops herself through that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Yeah.
just thinking of like the flower, dropping the flower into the candle is kind of like a an offering. I was thinking the fact that she can't say anything shows that she's not, what would you say, she's not ready for it, or she's not worthy or something like that. It's like when you make an offering to the divine, um it maybe you don't know what you're doing. You're not prepared, and you don't. I thought her not being able to talk shows that she doesn't have the right mindset. She doesn't
Mm.
know the meaning of this. So, and then he has to flee, and uh and then that initiates, yeah, that whole journey.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like that because the like if we map on the son or the prince or whatever as sort of a stand-in for the divine, or sort of like, I don't know, maybe like a Jesus figure or something, some sort of a like human but also sort of standing in for something, then it's great because he is, I think he says at the end, he was enchanted and turned into the carnation. So he is like the carnation is him. It is an image for him and the union and her, her and the marriage of them, sort of his presence in her life is prefigured in the flower.
Mm,
And when she burns it, that initiates the contact between the two of them.
mm,
He's
mm,
revealed, and she can't speak for whatever reason. It doesn't really say especially in that part of the story. I was looking for it. It
mm.
doesn't even mention that she can't speak. It just says that he's frustrated that she says nothing.
Yeah.
But there's this sense I get of being tongue-tied, of being frozen, in a fight, flight, or freeze kind of like you kind of freeze up, deer in the
Mm,
headlights kind of a thing. I imagine if you're looking at a flower just logically and it burns up and all of a sudden there's this like handsome man there, and the woman is struck dumb by like, oh my God, what's this guy? What's going on? So on the one level, it's kind of understandable, but he requires her to speak. So he requires, in this case, her something from her truth to come out. He requires her to like come out to meet him. And I think the divine requires that of us too. We need to come out to meet, whatever it is, whatever model of the divine you're working with.
mm,
But I thought it was really interesting that she freezes up and he therefore has to go into a stone because she's a stone by freezing. She's
mm,
not just like a stone. Like he's talking to her and she's just like,
mm,
she's not saying anything, right? So she's got this like stony presence, this inactive presence. And so therefore her connection to the divine or whatever it is that he symbolizes, her masculine nature or however you want to look at it, the thing that we're trying to unify with throughout the entire fairy tale also goes into the rocks. And so she has to go through these trials and tribulations, like you're saying, to break her own stoniness down until
mm,
she's able to freely express. And when she can freely express, then the divine can freely express, and that spell is broken and the union's allowed to happen.
mm,
But the thing I think is super interesting is that, yes, she's not ready, but the divine never abandons her. Like
mm,
even though it ends with the sort of like, thank God the husband didn't have to deal with the annoying crying wife bit, but the actions of the characters is like she sees him and he leaves. He has to go because she doesn't speak. He ends up in the stones. She's wandering, but she's drawn to him somehow. She ends up crying under the stones. Um, and then from then on, like every time she goes to cry, he's there. So he's like, if he is standing in for the divine, if we are looking at it that way, or some higher connection to something, he's always there for her when she's about to maybe speak. He's never like, oh, I'm done. I'm not showing up. And I think that points to something about our relationship with something higher as well, is that like we may initiate something, we may not be ready, but if we keep trying, if we keep taking the steps that are put in front of us, taking up the tasks, even if they seem impossible, over time, like the divine is there waiting for us to develop to that point where we do something true does come out of us and then it can meet us. It sort of is the same thing. Like as the truth comes out of us, that is the divine manifesting. So
mm,
it's like she's both the stony woman who's frozen and she's the divine that's stuck in the rock. So when she's able to speak her truth, then the two of, that's the divine coming out of the stone that is her soul as well.
mm.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And I would point out that so when she burns up the carnation and doesn't speak, and he tells her to go to the stones at the end of the world or whatever it's called. So he gives her that. It's like, okay, you messed up, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, but here's your one instruction. So then she goes to that other place, and then that's where all the, what can you say, the energy, all the action of the rest of the story takes place. That's her new fate, although she has to still kind of, yeah, do all these tasks and everything. And
Yeah, and each time she like that's a good point because he does say, yeah, like you'll have to search for me amongst the rocks of the world or whatever it is. So
Mm,
even then he's like, because if we're looking at it as a story about perfectionism, which I think the climactic moment of the candle going out does imply,
mm,
I'm not just pulling this because Michael Mead said it, it does make sense to me with the candle
mm,
going out, sort of the ultimate act is her failure that leads to the expression that they've been waiting for all along.
mm,
That like her not being ready, her not behaving perfectly, like that's part of the story. That's a feature of the story. That's not a flaw in the character.
mm,
Like the story I think isn't trying to tell us, you know, don't burn the carnation until you're ready to speak. I think the story is
mm,
trying to tell us burn the carnation, and if you're not ready, but you continue, you will speak when the time is right,
mm,
you know. I don't know. I think that's pretty hopeful.
mm. But so you think the story is saying like there when a carnation is gifted to you, yeah, go ahead and burn it and don't worry about that it got burnt.
I mean, I think if you stumble into a relationship with the divine that you don't feel prepared for, or you feel like you've made a mistake with, or any of those things, anything that might put you in the place of the woman in the moment where she's burnt the flower, the handsome man has appeared, she's been in love with him, she whatever
Mm.
she like there's some sort of a she's sort of whatever awestruck by him in
She
that moment.
attracted to him.
Yeah. Um to not I mean even on a basic level of relationships, like if you're struggling to relate to the opposite sex or the same sex, if that's your thing, your desired partner, and you keep freezing up, like to keep going out there and to keep, don't take it to mean that because you burnt the carnation and the prince showed up and disappeared that you shouldn't leave home, you shouldn't look amongst the rocks of the world, you shouldn't try and figure out what happened, you shouldn't go on the journey. Because she even when he tells her, like she goes out like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have to find him amongst the rocks of the world. Is she
Mm,
like running around picking up rocks and looking for him? Like
mm,
it doesn't say, but I can imagine her state of mind, and she could have chosen to stay at home. She could have chosen to say, well, I didn't do it perfectly, so therefore I can't do it, and I shouldn't try,
mm.
you know. So I think the fact that her continuing to take action despite everything seeming impossible or strange, or then when she finally has the thing and it's going well, it doesn't work, that it's still something can come of an effort, even if it's not the result that you're thinking of, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good lesson of this story that yeah, it carries you along with that and in your own life when you have something that you desire. I was thinking at some point, I was thinking this is like erotic love. And especially when you had mentioned you have a perfectionism about creativity, that can also be viewed as eroticism. You're looking for uh, ex on expression of something that only becomes known to you as you express it.
Mm,
Similarly to like a sexual relationship, it becomes known as it's happening, and it's also about a fulfillment. And it does involve consummation as well, not just trying to pun on sex, the sex act itself, but yeah, a consuming and a growing through consuming or um, and extending your soul.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
you know,
Yeah, I mean, I think the mirroring of the creative act and the sexual act is that symbolism can be taken very, very deeply.
yeah,
I think you're doing a good job of it. And I think that we don't often credit how much the two have in common. You know,
yeah,
we sort of, oh, the creative act is like the sacred, safe thing. It's beautiful.
Mm.
I mean, there's a lot of sexual art as well, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's interesting to me to link the two. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, it's interesting to me too. I mean, people point out how maybe humans are unique in this, where we have maybe perhaps sublimated the sexual desire um to creativity, sorry, to specifically to art or
Mm,
to
mm.
maybe with science or just other things, just other ways that we are trying to create something even outside of our bodies that is some reflection of us and that is we think is good in some way, beautiful in some way, and represents us in some way, like I said. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think how do I say it? Like there's a I don't know. I guess again the perfectionism of like needing to know what it is ahead of time kind
Yeah,
of ruins, with sex or creative work, kind of
completely.
stops the flow in the first place.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the perfectionism, like at least for me, the idea of dropping the perfectionism feels very threatening. Like there's a safety element to like the part of me that holds on to the perfectionism um and thinks it's a workable strategy in life
Hmm.
um, believes, I think, the sense I have of it is that that part of me believes that, oh, if I can get it perfect, then I'll be safe. I'll belong. I'll be good enough. There's a like, in that case, I can drop my protections and exist as myself if I am perfect. But you can never be perfect. And so it ends up being this sort of like, um, well, this is straight from Michael Mead. It ends up being like a death in life. Like you end up, all of that ends up sort of locked up. Um, I had somewhere else I was going to go with that, but I seem to be here. So here we are.
Yeah, maybe you'll remember it. We can circle back to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, do you think some of the I had two thoughts. One was that maybe in trying to, so are we trying to be perfect? Or are we trying to look perfect? And I was wondering if one is trying to make something that is perfect or and hence look perfect. This could be, you know, a child or a work of art or whatever. Maybe one is trying to be accepted. You can't. It's very hard for others to reject you if what you presented was perfect. It's like people will be in awe, other people will praise it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It avoids a certain kind of suffering.
Mm,
Failure, rejection, um, dismissal, just being ignored,
mm,
um,
mm,
all that kind of thing. And like, obviously that happens in life. Like the idea of having an experience in life or having a life experience, like, a life that you're living where like you never experience those things feels pretty impossible and kind of silly. It's like come on, like what are you trying to do,
yeah.
Um, but I think yeah, there's something about like the perfectionism as a means of procuring a sort of safety that I think hints at a resolution, like a way out. Because like, I mean, the safety is from these experiences of rejection. The experiences of rejection must carry some kind of a meaning, otherwise they wouldn't bother. Like what is it that they're they're summoning up? Why are they so fearful that they are causing this part of, me or whomever to sort of grip onto this perfectionistic goal, to try and keep the flower perfect and alive and not
Yeah.
set it on
Yeah.
fire. Um, and what is like, so it's a protective thing. So it's trying to separate something, or it's trying to save something, some part, some other part, or maybe itself from having some sort of an experience, some sort of a negative experience.
Yeah.
And to the extent that I can allow myself to have that negative experience consciously and see that, like, oh, it doesn't actually destroy me, then the part that's needing that protection can maybe slowly over time be like, oh, okay, we're actually safe, even in rejection and being ignored and being like, oh, we're still alive and this is okay. That's not actually threatening my life. Then like the perfection would ease up and you could kind of move forward.
Yeah.
Um, which I think is what we get in sort of a negative way with the, the daughter or the maid here, in that she is forced in this, she's sort of had these moments of, I think I'm going to fail. Oh, it's worked out. I think I'm going to fail. Oh, it's worked out. I think I'm going to fail. Oh, it's worked out. Okay, maybe it'll work this time. Um, and it doesn't work. She fails, but then that actually is the thing that cracks her open. That's actually the thing that, like, that experience of failure is the thing that allows her to speak. So it is kind of pointing to like that being the end of the perfectionism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. As you were talking about the sort of maybe gripping onto the idea of perfection and therefore not doing the creative work, not going forward with that, with the messiness, with the doubt and difficulty and all that. Yeah, I was thinking how this maps on to the story where she has to endure this, all these other people's jealousy and conniving against her. They get the head of the place you're at to sort of give you this impossible task, and that happens several times. Um, but at the end, I was also thinking, yes, you could interpret that as yes, the image she goes forward with, presumably with the procession of all the candles lit and everything, um, doesn't is not fulfilled. Like she does not go forward with her candle also lit. It's blown out. But I was also thinking, and this is in some way, if we want to get into the progenitor type of story, the Cupid and Psyche that helped to lead to this story.
Mm,
Um, it's related to that with the zephyr and the gentle wind and everything. But
mm,
I was thinking that uh, the wind blows it out, and the wind often means like a spirit kind of. It can be a divine kind of wind and everything. And I was thinking when that blows out the fire, that maybe has something to do with, I don't know if it's a blessing or, but I wonder if you could map it onto creative insight, where
mm,
typically one will work and work and work and work, and then one will have like an insight, but one will not have the insight if you just kind of, like, if you were just kind of lazily thinking about it as you go about your normal, you know, day. You have to actually do the work, and then you will have the flash of insight. I know in this story it's not like a bolt of lightning or something, or it's not a light, which is what I think kind of uh is symbolic of insight, but maybe it's something like that, the breath of wind or something. Maybe that's like what was missing in her life. I'm thinking of the story elements too, of earth out of which the flower grows, and fire into which she drops the flower, and then the rock, the stone, in which her future love is encased, and then now we get the wind, and that's what
Hmm.
seems to sort of break the curse for that leads her. It's a beautiful complexity at the end where it's like the wind goes out. She's again surprised for the second time in the story, and I think for the second time in the story, shocked for the second time maybe, and then
Hmm.
she utters something, and then that's what breaks the curse. But yeah, I wondered, yeah, what do you think about that? Something about this divine wind or gentle zephyr kind of wind or something.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. That's a great drawing together of a lot of the different pieces. What was coming up for me when you were describing it was like the when this is actually something that I do run into with my writing is like I will have some idea of what it is that I want to say. I'll have, oh, I want to write an essay about this thing. And so I'll sit down to write it and it just kind of doesn't work. And the times I've had a more successful writing, it doesn't always work this way, but the times I've had a more successful where I just sit down and I'm just like, okay, whatever comes out is going to come out. And I feel like what we're seeing here is like so several years ago there was this thing on Facebook that my wife and I will remind each other of. It was a picture of Jesus and a little girl, and the little girl has this like little teddy bear that she's holding, and Jesus is like taking the teddy bear away, and the caption is like, "No, Jesus, I love it. It's my teddy bear," or something like that. But from the viewer's perspective, you can see that Jesus is holding like a larger teddy bear behind his back. So this sense of like the divine coming through, and when we lose something, it's often to be replaced with something better that we couldn't imagine ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to creative work like this, like she's trying to lead this ritual. She has this idea of the perfect way to lead the ritual. She's holding the candle, and then something comes and snuffs out the candle. So something out of her control has dashed her hopes of this perfect thing that she's trying to create based on the advice of the man that keeps coming out of the stone. Um, and so in that moment, when the candle is snuffed out, so too is her vision of what this perfect thing is going to be. She's put into a place of not knowing what is going on.
Mm,
The sort of image she's been holding as her guiding star or whatever that she's been following this image, it's taken away,
mm,
and she has a smoking candle wick
mm,
left where the flame was,
mm,
um, which is actually interesting because if the it's just as a little aside, if the carnation was this image that gets burnt to create the real thing, here at the end you have the fire also. The carnation has to disappear into the fire, and then the fire disappears as well, and that's where the man the prince, the husband, comes out. Um, but I think just to kind of go back to the gentle zephyr, it's like the sort of trust in the world, trust that,
mm.
she has this idea, she's even been told she thinks it's the right thing to do. Something comes along and changes it, but that ends up being for the best, because it gets her to a point where she speaks, which is what the whole
Yeah.
story has been waiting for her to do, is to get her to actually speak.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think it's sort of a like uh almost like a trickster kind of a thing, in that like it feels kind of like she gets pranked. Like, hey,
Yeah.
do this ritual. And then right at the
Yeah.
last minute, they're like, no, we're gonna fuck up your ritual. She's like,
Yeah.
oh, why did you do that to me? But in order to get her to say, why did you do that to me? Because that was the only thing that was gonna bring it out of her.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah, I was thinking it is something like a trick. I mean, before he's told her to do something and she'd done exactly what he told her to do, and she does that again and again.
mhm.
And I don't know, it's kind of like early and middle phases of learning something. You have to kind of do it the way you're supposed to, do it by habit and everything, follow the rules exactly. But then once you've developed some mastery, some expertise, some feel for it, then you're supposed to go out and yeah, the something else will take over, or Yeah, the like you're saying, trust in the world or something. Like at first you're stumbling around and you're just kind of doing what you're supposed to do, but eventually, yeah, you develop a feel and you can develop a trust relationship with the world. And then something new comes in and that's really a and then what we can say it's a gift comes.
Yeah, and I think I was thinking of like you were saying earlier, like in creative work or scientific work or anything where you're trying to generate something new, like you can work at it and you can work at it and you can work at it, but oftentimes it's when you the moment where you stop working at it and you drift off to sleep or you go for a walk or you do something where your mind isn't focused on the problem anymore. It's been focused on it for a long time, which was an important part of the process, like you're saying. But then at the very end, there has to be this letting go of the focus so that the revelation can actually be given to you.
Yeah.
Um, and you think of like, was it everybody, everything it is attributed to Einstein, so it probably wasn't actually him. But I remember hearing a story of Einstein or somebody doing a thing where they were when they were trying to come up with something, looking for ideas, they would doze with a set of keys in their hand, and
I've
they just sit in a chair, and like when they actually slept, they would drop the keys and it would wake them up. So they'd have that they were like trying to access that moment just before sleep where there's room for something new to come in. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I thought it was some other eminent scientist like Tesla or maybe was a light bulb guy, Edison. I
Oh, maybe
fi
it was
but
Edison. Yeah. I think I've also heard it was Salvador Dali. I don't know. I've heard it attributed to a few people. So
yeah,
any one of them, very creative, very effective in their chosen fields. So
yeah,
um, yeah, I think a good reminder that we don't create on our own so much as receive and enact what we are
yeah,
given, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
I also wanted one other thing I wanted to sort of point to here. Um, was something you had mentioned about like the forces arrayed against our little maid, little laborer's daughter of like she's she leaves. So again, if we're looking at it as like the common realm into the noble realm being like moving up into something a little more elevated or sacred,
mm,
as a metaphor, not as an equation.
mm,
But she gets that moment with the flower that sort of lights the spark of like her eventual journey, and she wanders out into the world, and then the first thing that happens is she's introduced into the household, the noble household. So
mm,
that's sort of like she gets the call, she responds to the call. Because she responds to the call until she is exhausted, like she kind of gets to the end of her steam, she's lifted up into a higher level. But then once she's in the higher level, the forces around her like work against her.
mm,
So the maids, the maids, they're
mm,
jealous of her, so they make up these stories. But it's through those stories that she progresses in her growth
yeah,
by not stories through the resistance of the other maids, the things. So the household itself, if we're looking at like the maids and the mistress and the eventual missing son as sort of the higher realm that she's stepping into, this sort of other world, like it's running her through this alchemical process of like we're gonna put you an impossible challenge and you're going to have to meet it. And she does so with the help of this, this partner, this pair, the prince, the sort of
mm,
higher reflection relationship.
mm,
So that sort of carries her through it. But every time it's the maids, it's the other kind of mid-level, because maids are not they're not the mistress. They're not no, they're not of the family. They serve the family. So it's
mm,
this like barrier that she has to go and serve the higher and be worked by those that are serving the higher so that she is made ready to actually pair with the higher and take her place as eventual mistress of the house over all of these maids that have been treating her pretty badly.
mm,
Like she's gonna marry the heir. She's gonna inherit the whole system.
mm,
So I just think that because you could easily say like, oh, the maids are just being jerks, but in the same way that The prince has to retreat and go into the rocks so that she's forced out into adventure. The maids are acting ultimately on her behalf, even though they don't know that. And they're challenging her again and again to kind of grow her ability in the world and her sense of listening and responding to the divine to the point where she in the final one, like she says, "Oh, I can't do this," and the mistress isn't like, "Well, you better do it." She's like, "Oh, well, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Just try it and see what happens." So the
Mm,
pressure is off from the mistress at that point. The maid has kind of worked her way up, and the mistress is like, "Hey, like let's just see how this goes." Um, and so I don't know, the pressure is off, and then that's the point where like the actual breakthrough happens.
mm,
So there's probably a lot more layers in there than I'm not necessarily seeing, but I just liked that the you can see these sort of jealous, vindictive fellow maids as also working on her behalf.
mm,
And I think we can, that's something I would like to take into my own life of like when there's some sort of struggle or something, it's also working on my behalf, you know.
yeah, I think that's very useful. It's, I think Stoicism kind of has that kind of idea. I've heard this idea of Stoic gods that you can kind of imagine uh, are putting obstacles in your path when you encounter challenges in life, and they're trying to make you better. And maybe by having that sort of framing, you can kind of, rather than, yeah, be silenced or be bowled over by them, kind of become stronger, become a better person.
Yeah. Although I will add, just because I feel it's important with this story, that you can also fail and still like the point of the task could be that you fail at it, not necessarily that you succeed.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's interesting one for me to like note down in the back, you know?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, but don't you think, yeah, whether you fail or succeed, you develop as a person, right? Like you develop some wisdom through the suffering and everything. So even if you never, potentially, even if you, I mean, thinking of Van Gogh, for instance, never succeeded in a way in his lifetime. I think he only sold one painting or something like that. But anyway, as in this world, even if you don't succeed, I mean, through through being given obstacles, you can develop as a person. You can become better, and maybe, I mean, I sort of think ultimately that's the more important thing than what you ever create is what you become as a person. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I think for sure that's helpful because then you're not focused so much on the outcome. You're able to just act for the sake of learning to act.
mm,
And then you save yourself the trouble of like learning to not put yourself in a position where you're going to have to deal with heartbreak of disappointment of, oh, it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. Like if you're just like, well, if I succeed or I fail, I still learn something. Um, then you're detached from result. And I think that's ultimately where a lot of these things are aiming us towards is like, I mean, there's a lot of systems that focus on that, on the not longing for a result, not focusing on the result, but focusing on the action of what you're actually doing. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of that in Zen. There's a lot of that in Hinduism. The whole Bhagavad Gita is pretty much about that. Just taking action. Stoicism for sure, as you've already covered, and I'm sure there's more that aren't necessarily coming up, but yeah, I think I would agree that that's like a key thing, kind of a pattern of growth or a means of learning to approach life more holistically, more correctly, humbly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me think of the opposite sort of example, at least the way I think of him as F. Scott Fitzgerald. I recently reread The Great Gatsby for one of the classes I was teaching. Do you remember that book?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't
Eh,
read it in a while, but I definitely remember it. Yeah.
He and the author talks about that book being like what his life was. You know, he said it feels so real because it was his life.
Mm.
Kind of a tragic life. He ended up dying, I think, at 40 from alcoholism. So yeah, pretty harsh life. But I think of that book and him as sort of, so he's from like a sort of lower middle class background. I think his father had like some success in his furniture business, but ended up failing and kind of drank himself to death.
Mm.
And F. Scott, very talented student, he went to maybe Yale, one of those exclusive kind of colleges, but you know, being sort of from his background, he's sort of standing out, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and he fell in love with, and from her journals, she was deeply in love with him too. This sort of student at like a nearby college, from like a truly wealthy, like Scion kind of background in Chicago or something. And her basically her family wouldn't let it go through. And it seems like he was haunted the rest of his life, as Jay Gatsby is, by sort of what could have been or what should have been, damn it, and you know, trying to move up in life in a sort of more literal, a sort of social ladder kind of way. And you know, it's kind of a, I mean, it's like his whole life was just like the tragedy of an artist who you know, he, because of his talent, he knew he was so good, but he was never able to make enough money, and you know, he never, some of his acclaim was very belated, even after his death, and not all of it, but yeah, yeah, I thought of him thinking of this story and how this folk tale can kind of teach you to not be like that. Hopefully, I mean, it's much harder when you have a lot of money and you have a lot of people's voices in your ear, and you know, and you know, he was living in the roaring 20s, and it was all fueled by alcohol. He was drinking a lot, so it's sort of this kind of rabid kind of energy. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's really too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, like hearing you tell the sort of the heartbreaking story of him and this woman who, they loved each other, but it didn't work out is like, that's like an anti-fairy tale, right? Like, because in the fairy tale, the laborer's boy learns well, falls in love with the princess, is given impossible tasks and succeeds at them and wins the princess. And in this case, I can't imagine he was really told to, go wash all the laundry in the kingdom or something. And
Yeah,
then you could marry, sort of like, no, you can't marry my daughter. Fuck off, poor boy. Like that's not an impossible task. That's just a door in your face. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's sad, first of all. That's the dangers of mixing the 3D real world with these fairy stories as if they were the same. Obviously, you'll end up in kind of a disappointment in cases like this. But I also think like, and I don't know his life, and I would, I'm sure, go through the same experience if I'd had the same life as him. Then the thing that I would hope for him or for me in that situation would be like, just like in this story, if the carnation burns, or if the image of the thing that was going to make me perfectly happy doesn't come true, am I able to keep trying to search for some level of fulfillment that maybe isn't in the world, but I can there, to not give up to the point where the pain of the loss of the thing that was so beautiful drives me to addiction to avoid the pain. Like
yeah,
there's got to be a different way,
yeah,
you can't just be stuck between this idealized meaning of what could be, the impossibility of it ever coming to be, the pain of having to hold the two of those things, and that's it. Like I don't think that that's all there is to the whatever process we're describing here, the life process. There has to be something else that comes out of it, although it may never look like the thing we think it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And to be open to that and not stuck on the idea of, oh, it has to be this woman or I'm going to be sad and I will be so sad about this thing I'm never going to get that I have to drink to deal with the pain. I think a lot of addiction is driven by an attempt to escape a pain that we think is impossible to escape. And if we could find a way to not, I don't know, I don't have an easy answer to addiction, but like whatever it would be that would have it be that that pain is seen differently so that there is a way through it, as opposed to you're just stuck in that pain forever, that would be a way to go about helping to resolve an addiction problem. But to do that, you have to really go inside and figure out what the fuck is going on. And I can't say that that's possible for everybody. I don't want to victim blame those who are suffering from addiction. That's not what I'm saying at all. That, such things can be impossible, I am sure. Um, and I don't know. I don't know either way. But my hope would be that for people stuck in that kind of a place, that there is some sort of a way through. And if these stories can help provide a sense of a way through, then good. And if they end up making people feel like, oh, you're just saying that my problem is my fault, and if I was just better, I wouldn't have this problem. It's like, no, there's the perfectionism. That's perfectionism, and that's clearly not what we're trying to do here. So, um, it's a mystery. The turning point is a mystery. When in any kind of 12-step program, they say you got to hit rock bottom. What is that? How does that work? Why does it work for some people, not other people? How come somebody's rock bottom looks this way, somebody else is in that exact position? They just keep engaging in the destructive behavior. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think there's a formula, but I think I want to live in a world where we are rewarded for maintaining hope.
I think we do live in that world, but yeah, what are you hoping for? Are
Mm,
you hoping to be the world's greatest novelist who is rich and beloved by everybody around you, living in a palace? You know, I'm sort of mixing the images of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Jay Gatsby, but I'm thinking,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, I think, God, I forgot who said this, but I've heard that addiction can be seen as like someone searching for transcendence in the wrong place. And I think that combines with what you're saying about kind of trying to escape the pain as well. It's like you don't escape pain by getting rid of the thing that caused it. You move beyond it, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
but it's like we're maybe holding on to that previous thing. Like why can't it be? Why can't it be? Why can't it be? So
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you're the linking of that you just did of like the mixture of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Gatsby. It's like I'll have to go back and reread the story, or maybe you can tell me, but I'd like to go back and reread it anyway. But
mm,
I'm wondering, like if we look at it as Fitzgerald's unconscious trying to create an image or a dream or a story where Fitzgerald's own longing for this woman and the life that he would have if they had married, and the sort of the palace and the servants, and showing how unsatisfying that is to Gatsby
yeah.
ultimately, because doesn't he like? kill himself or something at the end? Or he swims, or something bad happens to him, but I can't remember the specifics.
He ends up it's a great story. So the woman he was longing for, Gatsby was longing for,
Hmm.
Daisy, from when he like he was in the army, so he was stationed in like Louisville, and then he's just like a normal kind of middle class guy, lower middle class guy or something in the army now. But then he's able to meet Daisy, who's kind of like this wealthy socialite, beautiful, perfect girl. Everybody wants to be her or be with her, and her family kind of entertains the soldiers that are about to go off to war as sort of like a kind of patriotic duty or something like that, honoring them kind of thing. And then
Hmm.
they fall in love. But then, yeah, he realizes, oh God, I'm not good enough for her. I don't have the money. And then he does his kind of shady drugstore kind of businesses. And that's how he's able to get the wealth. And the whole time he's moving up in the sort of bootlegger world, he's looking across the bay at Daisy, who's now gotten married because he to sort of this awful guy in but from a super rich family. And then he's able to reconnect with Daisy through the first person narrator,
Hmm.
um, and who's her cousin, uh, and uh, and then they start having an affair. Sorry, having to go through like the whole novel to answer your question,
No,
but
this is great. I forgot like half of this stuff, so please continue.
and I might be messing it up or glossing it over slightly, but or maybe a lot, but basically, so they end up having an affair, and then her husband kind of finds out about it, and he's having an affair with his the wife of his mechanic. And through this horrible coincidence, and there's this car accident and everything, the mechanic ends up and then so the mechanic's wife is killed, and the mechanic ends up blaming Jay Gatsby for her murder or something like that, for her death, excuse me,
Hmm.
because Daisy was driving the car, but it was Gatsby's car. It's a pretty
Okay.
good plot. I'm kind of I should be able to tell it better, but um, the mechanic ends up going to Gatsby's house after things have kind of dropped off with Daisy and just kind of become nothing, which is kind of an
Hmm.
interesting thing.
Hmm.
Um, because Gatsby, I mean, this is just like the self-awareness of Fitzgerald, but like not being able to put it in his life somehow is just a tragedy in itself. So Daisy is ready to get with Gatsby and to leave her husband, but he needs her to be just like he thought she was 5 years ago. I can't remember in what way, but I remember it comes to a culmination in a conversation. And I think Nick Carraway, the first person narrator, says, you can't relive the past. It's something like that. And Gatsby goes, you can.
Ah.
And so Daisy just
Oh.
she can't deal with that, and so it just kind of drops off. And so Gatsby is kind of at the end of his rope. He's in his pool. What the hell am I doing with my life? There's no purpose anymore. And then that's when he gets killed by the mechanic. And yeah, I think you may have remembered it like a suicide because it is like a suicide. It's like suicide by another person. So.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, man. Yeah, I'd have to really dig into that, but just like a brief sketch of like Fitzgerald creates a story where the character gets the thing that Fitzgerald wants and is not happy with it, but still insists that he wants it and then dies, and like it feels like a broken fairy tale or something, in that like there's not a happily ever after. There's not a, and not to say that like, oh, if he and Daisy had gotten married that would have resolved the story. I just mean that like the drive behind Gatsby doesn't become something else. It just dies. Um, and so Gatsby dies. The part of Fitzgerald that Gatsby represents dies unfulfilled and does not resurrect in some way. And not to say that we want Gatsby coming back from the dead in some weird, out of
Yeah.
the story, but like you could have like I don't know, just off the top of my head, like Gatsby dies, but then there's like a flower that grows on his grave or something. I mean, I'm sure Fitzgerald could have done a better job of it. I could do a better job if I had more than 5 minutes here. But like some sort of a, like the within the energy of the story, well, within the realm of the story, the energy that Gatsby has been representing is shown to sort of die and be reborn, in a Christ on the cross kind of a way. Like death happens, but then 3 days later, Christ is resurrected. Like Gatsby dies, but then Gatsby's just dead. And so therefore, like the energies that were tied up in Gatsby go underground, go into the unconscious, they die, and there is no path back for them.
Hmm.
And that would lead to the ache of addiction and the suffering that would lead to Fitzgerald's own alcoholism and death because whatever if we're going to take the assumption, which is kind of safe, but obviously not 100% true, that Gatsby is a representation of some part of Fitzgerald's psyche,
Mhm.
that part dies unfulfilled and is not able to be reborn. And so that ache carries through Fitzgerald's life with a similar lack of resolution. And in that's the thing that would drive an addiction is some sort of an ache that has no chance of resolution, cannot let go, cannot burn the flower that the laborer's daughter burns, that starts her on her journey, that gets her, like, can't let go of that initial image
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
no, I can relive the past. No, I will have it be the way I want it to be.
Yeah.
No, like to bring back my little metaphor, my little meme of Jesus with the two teddy bears. It's like if the little girl was like, "No, I want this teddy bear," and
Yeah.
Jesus is like, "Okay, well, like keep your teddy bear, but the better one that I have, you don't ever get to find because you're
Yeah.
not willing to face the grief of loss
Yeah.
of your initial dream."
Yeah.
Fitzgerald, like Gatsby, Daisy's never going to be who you thought she was. And if you can't accept that, you're going to die. So
Yeah.
maybe that's what Fitzgerald was trying to work out there was like that thing would die, but then there is no thing to long for anymore. So what do you do with all that libido, with all that life force energy that's been invested in this image? When the image fails to support it, does the life force energy still inhabit that failure? And therefore, the libido itself is a failure. I don't know. This is obviously I was not planning to talk about this, so this is all off the cuff.
No,
But
this is good. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, what I was thinking the with Gatsby dying, I mean, isn't that because it's a tragedy and there's something different about that genre maybe? And
Mm.
supposedly with tragedies, isn't there that the some sort of way that the audience can kind of be but yeah, I thought isn't there something renewing for the audience about tragedy, seeing the death of the hero? See, it's like the whole the whole story of Gatsby starts off with, Nick Carraway narrating in the past, and like Gatsby is this person in his past, and then the whole tale is like going forward to his death. But is there some sort of
Mm.
I actually don't have a sense of this, but I've heard there's some from the death of the tragic hero, there's a new life for the audience. But I don't know if you have this sense. But I only have an incomplete one.
Yeah. No, it's a good like tragedy is definitely not my area of expertise, definitely not my area of interest.
Mm,
I like hopeful stories. I feel like that's more of what we need, but I like obviously there is something to tragedy and obviously it does speak
mm,
on levels like you're saying, there is some sort of a thing. I mean, the failure. the failure of a doomed enterprise
mm,
is life affirming in a sort of way. It is, like you said, for the audience, like there's sort of a like, oh, right, like, um, or even maybe, I'm thinking of some of the Greek tragedies, that are just pretty horrific as well.
mm,
Like maybe there's this sense of like the the common suffering of humanity.
mm,
Um, if even these exalted figures are subject to chance and
mm,
bad things, come of not their own will. I mean, we're approaching Christ on the cross territory. We're approaching sort of the suffering, the necessary suffering of innocence in order to gain experience.
mm.
Um, so there might be something there, but um, yeah, sort of reaping the value of a tragic story is not something that the structures I've built in my mind can readily, generate. Um, which, yeah, maybe I should look at that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I also don't tend to go for tragedies very much. I just on a more superficial level, like you're saying, the digesting of the suffering of any type of protagonist, tragedy or fairy tale or what, um, it seems that that is the important thing, whatever the genre.
Mhm.
It's to, um, like you were saying, not map any story onto your life exactly, but to take the story which is written in a narrative which humans naturally will remember and retell and can learn from and be educated by in a way that's natural. It's entertaining while we're learning. You have to take that story and then digest it, kind of like what we do, and to try to understand it, and then it can after it's digested, it can be food. It can be sustenance and energy and wisdom for your life. But
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Huh. Yeah, that's it. Like thinking of it that way, my sort of gut level response to, digesting the meaning or the story of a tragedy is like again, my gut level response is like, yeah, I'm good. I understand that. Like my life, maybe not my personal life, although also my personal life, but like the life I've lived in the world in these times, there's tragedy everywhere. The homeless people on the street, war, war, the other war, the current wars, everything that's going on. Like we are inundated with tragedy and with failure and with a lack of meaning. Um, and I want to learn redemption. I want to know where renewal comes from. I
mm,
want to find the thing that underlies all of it, the ground from which new can spring. Like that's what I want to spend my life doing. And maybe if I were in a society that was more successful or more, there was less tragedy in the world, maybe I would be like, oh, like I don't need the happily ever after. Like it's good to be reminded of the tragic and there's lessons there and I can digest that. And maybe there's a lot more going on and maybe that's just me personally. Maybe other people in the world get a lot out of tragedy. And so I don't mean to imply that it's global just because I described it globally. But
mm,
for me, that's the gut level response is just like I'm sick of tragedy. Like I want something. I want that renewal. I want to know where that comes from and how I can help bring it out in the world. Sort of spark. I want to. I want to learn how to set the carnation on fire to start that adventure.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, have a different fate than just decline and death, and
yeah,
yeah, suffering and death and decline. Yeah,
yeah,
from your weaknesses, but how to transcend that stuff.
yeah, yeah. And even like I'm okay with suffering, decline, and death. Like that's going to happen. Um, I think like we were saying earlier, like having a life without that is kind of ridiculous, but equally having a life without growth and redemption and hope and meaning is just as ridiculous. And I feel like, at least for me, I don't feel like the society supported much in regards to how to generate that kind of a thing.
Mm.
So that's my life path, I think, is to figure that the fuck out. Doesn't have to be for everybody, but that's for me.
Yeah, I was thinking a couple of things when you said you weren't so attracted to tragedy. I was thinking of how Nietzsche was very much attracted to tragedy, and it sort of almost characterized his life. And he sort of um, represented himself as like an anti-Socrates, and then I was thinking of how Plato, in many ways, I think, was trying to replace or at least to add to the corpus for Greeks to tragedy, where his dialogues are um, pleasant and not that they're not deep or something like that, but
Mhm.
the tone of them is very different than a Greek tragedy. And his biggest work, The Republic, ends with yeah, so at first they descend, but then it kind of goes into an ascent, of course, with the allegory of the cave, but with other things too. And eventually it ends with a kind of hopeful myth of how it's like a reincarnation kind of thing, and based on how people live morally, they go down or up, and as they're being reincarnated. And there's some interesting sort of speculations about how maybe um, Eastern ideas of reincarnation came into Greece at some point around then or a little bit before. But anyway, yeah, maybe Plato kind of felt as you're talking about, we need something more than tragedy can maybe have a detrimental effect, or that's probably wording it too strongly, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
too negative.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I definitely don't know enough about Plato and his world and his works to respond more than like, ooh, cool. Now I want to read The Republic.
That's a
Um,
long one. Yeah, but that's something that I take from Plato, like rereading the symposium or part of the symposium, which is about love, and much shorter if you want to read a Platonic dialogue. Um, yeah, the I I remembered before I reread part of it, I was remembering how deep and beautiful and complex it was, and so it's very gripping. But then rereading the beginning, it starts out just so pleasantly. And I think maybe most of his dialogues, to me, feel that way. It's a conversation. It's like a couple of guys talking. It's like a nice day outside. It's the
yeah,
opposite of sort of their, I can't remember Oedipus Rex very well, but like this, there's this heavy fate of this mortal being doomed from the beginning, you know?
yeah, yeah. Prophesied, and you're stuck by it, and that's all you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I wonder if that's part of the 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 nourishment of tragedy is like you see all the ways that the characters could have been different. The story could have been different if the characters had only had compassion for each other, had only been able to forgive each other, had only been able to be more aware of, I don't, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but it in telling the story of a character doomed to tragedy by their own destiny, their own stars, their own fate, their own fortune, whatever you want to call it, like reminds us, shows us, like gives us the visceral experience of, oh, but they could have changed it if only X, Y, or Z. And that reminds us that we can make changes in our life, and we are that if we go along with our own habitual sort of thoughtless patterns, that that's also doomed to some kind of a tragedy. And sort of like they say, there's that meme. I guess I'm quoting all the Facebook memes today, but there's the meme of like, or it's a little Twitter conversation or something, but like people all the time will talk about time travelers coming from the future and saying, oh, you need to do these things to change the future very drastically, but nobody ever talks about the fact that we can do that now. We can, we don't have to have somebody come from the future. We can try and take those actions now to change the future that we're going to be headed towards. And we often don't think we can do that. I mean, so the tragedy does kind of remind us of our own agency. Strips away the blinders of, oh, well, it always has to be this way. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I that reminds me of another Greek philosophy. We mentioned this briefly, Stoicism and Stoic framing. And as you were saying that meme about the person from the future coming, uh, one Stoic framing meditation is to imagine your future self looking back on this time of challenge and, heartache or whatever you're going through, and kind of how would they view it? And, as time goes on, you can view it as like a learning experience, and certainly the negative emotions are much lessened. And ultimately, hopefully, talk about tragedy and its opposite in a way, comedy. You can kind of laugh at it, and then
Mm,
maybe being able to take that future self perspective and viewing your current thing as this is a challenge, and so maybe to quiet those voices that are ruminating about how terrible this is, how everything's messed up, and how it's always like this with me.
mm. Yeah, yeah, and that reminds me, like, especially in Shakespeare, like comedies often end in a wedding, uh, and metaphorically speaking, the things come back together. The things that were apart are back together. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Huh.
The future self and the present self, is that kind of what you're looking at?
Well, more so like, how do I put
You're
this? Like,
disjointed when you're
yeah,
when
like
you're
any kind of suffering is. I mean, we talk on here about the meaning crisis a lot, right? So, like the meaning crisis, one way you could look at it is like life is unfulfilling, and the proposition is because it's lacking in meaning. But the core thing that sparks it off is like something feels like it's not the way it should be. Something
yeah,
feels wrong or bad or off or out of joint or whatever. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, you said disjointed, so yeah, maybe this is going where you were hinting at.
Hmm.
But the idea being like we only know that it feels bad because there must be another way for it to feel. Otherwise, we wouldn't care. Like, I don't feel bad that I can breathe. Like, that
Yeah,
doesn't depress me. Like, that's the way it should be. There's just this like natural flow to the breath. I don't feel bad that when I eat a meal, I poop later. Like, that's how that process works,
yeah,
you know? But I feel bad that like when I go to work at the office and I work all day and I come home, I feel really depressed. Why do I feel bad? Well, something is off there. So it's a call. So the the metaphor of the wedding being like the sense of something being off is a longing for it to be right. It's a longing for like if you sense something is wrong, then somewhere in your unconscious is an image of like what it's supposed to be. Or
mm,
there's a call, there's a desire, probably not an image because that can get tricky, but like there's the energy is moving you in a certain way
mm,
towards a thing.
mm,
And that union with the thing is where like, oh, the longing in my heart has met its object and is joined with it
Mm,
whether we're talking the divine or we're talking about a relationship or we're talking about a job that is meaningful to us and has us feel engaged, like whatever it is, the wedding is the bringing together of the lover, the longing, and the beloved, the longed for. Like
mm,
once they join, um, then that's the creative act. Then new stuff can new life can grow.
mm,
Um, and sort of the drama continues. Whereas with tragedy, the two don't meet, and it ends badly and everyone dies.
yeah.
And so in the very least it amplifies that longing even more of like, oh, it doesn't shouldn't be this way. They
Mm,
shouldn't have had to die that way. She shouldn't have had to kill her children. Why did that happen? Oh, his arrogance. Oh, his
mm,
inability to deal with this thing. And what about me? Like, oh, when I can't deal with this thing, am I setting up these tragic circumstances? And how can I
mm,
be more stoic? How can I be more like in the face of what's going on and honest and true about what it is and respond in a way that is grounded and calm and like you were saying sort of before the call, all those things of like
mm,
it calls us to be human again, to have choice, to instinct, to initiate our power to get ourselves out of that particular rut,
mm.
whatever that might be. Um,
And so we
yeah.
can consummate rather than we can create rather than destroy, or
hmm
rather than what leads to destruction.
Yeah, yeah, well said. That distinction, that's a good distinction. Yeah. Do what leads to creation rather than do what leads to destruction.
Mm,
And like in our story, um, it might not be the way you think it's going to be. One of the things that I'm facing with in regards to my own creative struggles is like I have this idea of my newsletter and how I want it to go and how I want it to be. And um there like maybe that particular construct of how I think it's supposed to be needs to be destroyed
mm,
so that because that is actually blocking like with Gatsby, he's got this idea of what Daisy's supposed to be that's blocking him actually getting to know Daisy the way she is.
mm,
And so there's some sort of a depression or a withdrawal that has to happen for me in regards to my creative endeavors, where like the image that I'm holding up, like if I get depressed, if my life force energy, my libido kind of like sinks down into the unconscious, and I'm like, I can't really get to this. I can't really do it. Um, Maybe I need to try harder. That's definitely an option. And maybe the image that I have of what it looks like to try harder needs to die and transform, needs to
mm,
die and come back.
mm,
So that like if I can find where the energy is, or even just let that death happen, um,
mm,
the new creativity can come about. I mean,
mm,
oftentimes I'm in I mean, heck, in this fairy, I was gonna try and bring in Shakespeare, but I don't know any of my Shakespeare plays off the top of my head that quickly. But in our story, the Carnation, um, she tries again and again to, or really the prince tries again and again to get her to speak, and
mm,
she has to go through these stages of like
mm,
failure, success, but failure. Like he fails over and over to get her to speak until
mm,
finally at the end she speaks.
mm,
And every time he tries to get her to speak, it doesn't happen. So he has to sort of go back into the stone and then come back again once her desperation is strong enough
mm.
to draw him out. She has enough of a problem that he thinks, oh, if I can solve this, maybe she'll talk to me. Um, so that kind of went on a loop. But I think to kind of try and bottom line it is like if we are talking about meeting life successfully, we never know what that's going to look like. And
Mm,
it might, for one person, it might look like trying harder. For another person, it might look like giving up. And that's kind of the mystery that we have to step into and try and make sense of. Just like we were talking with the creative act and sexuality early on, like it's kind of an improv. You have to meet it where it is. If
mm.
you come to it with an image of what it's supposed to be like, you're not actually meeting it in the first place. Um, yeah.
There is another thing I'm thinking of in terms of creativity is there's a little like the Dionysus with the vine needs the trellis, the
Mm.
natural. fecund ent growing entity, the plant,
Mhm.
needs a type of structure. And to extend that, I mean, often, creatives, will often start with a story or a folk tale or something like that, or have a genre that they're writing in. It does give them some structure for the creativity. Um, does that apply to you at all?
Um, um, I'm not sure because my struggle with my creativity is still a bit of a mystery.
Mm,
Um, I certainly I certainly have the genres and the structures that I use in my newsletter. I'll write, sometimes it'll be a poem, sometimes it'll be a fairy tale, sometimes it'll be more of an essay. And so I sort of have an idea of what the piece is. Maybe not when I sit down to write it, but once I've written it, I'm like, oh, this is like, as I'm writing it, I'm like, okay, this is going in this
mm,
direction. And
mm,
apparently I'm writing a story today, or I get the idea and I write it out and I'm like, oh, this feels like it's a poem the way
mm,
the words are forming up. So I can kind of draw on it that way. And then especially once the revising process happens, where it's like, oh, how do I polish it? That's where a lot of the structure can come in and be like, okay, well, how, like, what is a good poem? What makes a good poem? What makes a good fairy tale? What makes a good essay? Like how the ones that I've
mm,
enjoyed, what why have I enjoyed them? And so the
mm,
structure can kind of, so there's the initial sprouting and then the structure kind of comes in and helps it to
mm,
thrive.
mm,
Um so that's good. Um and that is helpful, but all of that happens after I sit down.
mm.
And the struggle seems to be to get myself to sit down
Oh
and
yeah, that's the necessary component though, right? I mean, so many writers just Flannery O'Connor or Stephen King, they go to work. They go sit
mhm,
down at the desk, right? I
mhm,
mean, yeah, we all
mhm.
have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're busy, you got a lot of things going on, so it can be hard to do that.
Yeah. And hmm, there is some level of that perfectionism, that protective mechanism. Like there's something keeping me in these tight little recursive loops of like trying to sit down but not sitting down, but trying to sit down but not sitting down. And I don't know what, like I'm fascinated by that process. In I guess in a negative way too, but I meant that in a positive way. And that negative in that like I'm stuck in it and I'm sort of stuck in it. I'm hypnotized by it.
Mm,
But with every time I notice it, like I become fascinated by it in a good way of like, this is interesting. Why is this happening?
mm,
Where is this coming from?
mm,
Which part of me um, is is clinging so tightly onto the story of perfectionism and protection and being safe if I get it right, and it only being a good thing to do if I get it right. Um, there's something in my brain that doesn't want to expend resources on something without being sure it's going to be a good thing. And I know intellectually, I know that that's not, as you said, writers, I know that writers write. They sit down and they write
yeah.
every day. So like if I want to write things, I need to sit down and write everything. So what is it in the unconscious that is that is clinging on to and pushing down the energy that I need to just show up and write, to show up and meet that resistance and kind of like battle it. Um, Stephen Pressfield, the War of Art, kind of a
Mm,
show up and go to work in that way. Um, and I think, hmm, I think the process I'm going through is one of almost like a recursive personal archaeology, and that the more I'm able to notice, oh, I'm not sitting down because there's some sort of gripping inside of me. There's some sort of anxiety about being creative that most of the time I don't even notice. I just think I'm busy. But when I'm like, well, I'm not busy and I'm still not doing it, and I'm conscious in that moment, I notice the truth of the situation. It starts to make me curious about what it is that's causing that inside of me. There's something in my unconscious that is afraid and constricted. Um, and can I like use this moment of understanding that about myself to go inside and befriend that part of myself, to start understanding why it's there, what it's doing. Because I've certainly tried to overpower it with willpower, just kind of push through. And I'm continually like my willpower goes away. I run out of juice, and then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm not. I haven't written in weeks. What's going on? I'm back in that same recursive loop. So I almost feel like here we're back in Fitzgerald Gatsby territory of like I have this image of what being a good writer is supposed to be, and I'm trying to marry it. I'm trying to become that, and it's not working. Like something is blocking that. So I am still the woman in the stone. I am still locked up. I haven't been able to have that union happen. So what is it like? What is it like the woman in the stone? What is it in me that needs to cry out? What is it in me that is so afraid that it's clinging to this perfectionism, clinging to this story of like, oh, if I just get it right, then I won't have to deal with whatever the pain is that I'm afraid of dealing with. Um, and so if I can contact that part of me that is clinging, if I can use this recursive loop of trying to be creative and trying and failing and stay conscious through the whole process, that will sort of dig up this thing in the unconscious that is gripped and tight, gripping and tightened, in a way that hopefully I can. It's like this is something my therapist guy says to me is like you have to notice, you have to start doing consciously what you're doing unconsciously before you can stop doing it. So if there is some part of me that is gripping and keeping my energy down because it's afraid if I'm creative, something bad will happen, I can push through that and maybe that will dissolve. Oh, it's not so bad. It's great. And that, but I've tried that enough times and it doesn't seem to be working. So it's like, okay, in my particular case, maybe I need to do something else. Can I go in and find where that gripping is happening and start to inhabit that consciously so that once I'm once I'm able to hold that particular stone, that gripping, that tightness in my body, maybe I'll understand what it's afraid of. It will feel held in a way that it wasn't. It will stop needing that particular form of safety. Um, I think this is the alchemical journey. It's taking the lead, the heaviness, the sort of dead quality. I mean, lead is a very dead
Hmm.
metal, and it's turning that into gold. It's like processing it over and over through the consciousness in this way until
Mm.
until it shines and it's pure and it's what it's meant to be.
Mm.
Um, off the cuff, my guess, there's something really joyful that I want to express that I'm afraid won't be received or will be
Mm.
ruined. There's some sort of thing there, a preciousness maybe, but
Mm.
that
Yeah.
like that the gripping is trying to protect, and rightfully so to a certain extent. But ultimately, what I want is this thing to be processed through reality to the point where like it exists of its own. It's kind of unstainable. It's how do I put it? Like the thing, the precious thing that the fear is protecting. If I can drop the protection of it, the preciousness can be seen as like untouchable. Like it doesn't need protection. But I have to actually experience it being destroyed enough times to realize that it's still there. I don't know. Now I'm mixing my metaphors, but yeah, there's something in there. That's maybe one of the closest things I've been able to word to like what I think I'm trying, what I feel like I'm trying to do over here. Um, and yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds tough. I hope that path kind of works to kind of, is it safe to say that functions as a resistance to writing?
I think so. I think it's something like that. It's me, the resistance is there, and I can either ignore it, I can just blindly push against it, or I can try to figure it out. I can try to like be wily, be sly about it, and be like, okay, well, what's actually going on here, and what's the most effective ways of meeting it,
Mm,
such that like the thing that I want and the thing that it wants that seem to be at odds because I want this, I want to write and it's not letting me write. Can we reach some sort of a balance between the two so that something else can come out instead of
mm,
it needing to be one overpowering the other all the time,
hmm.
you know? Um, yeah, I think that would be the sort of process I'm talking about with the creativity.
Yeah, kind of a deepening self-knowledge of a part of yourself that's kind of you've been working against.
Yeah, and having it be something that's like in the what is it, Heidegger or something? But the like thesis, antithesis, and synthesis coming out. Like the thesis
Mm,
is I want to be a writer. The antithesis is like I'm too terrified to. So how do I synthesize something out of the both of them that is there's the marriage. How do I marry the two together so they're fecund and they create something new instead of just always being at each other's friction, always just being at each other's throats.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that marriage sounds like a good outcome. So maybe we'll kind of continue to talk about that over the course of the podcast.
I hope
Yeah.
so. I hope so. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Do you have anything more to say about this story or stoicism or creativity?
Not in the moment. That was I was not expecting to discuss any of that, and it seems to have wrung me out a bit as far as like having new ideas. Do you have? I don't need to necessarily. I'm not like I'm tired. I'm done. I'd be happy to discuss if there's anything else you have, but I don't. I have this sort of calm in me at the moment.
Oh, good. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
no, no. Yeah, I'm good. I feel like we treated this topic well. I thought our foray into F. Scott Fitzgerald was kind of fun too. So, yeah.
yeah. Very unexpected. I like that. I like that.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, so we'll find another folktale or myth next time. But yeah, it was good talking to you.
Likewise. Likewise. Thank you.